So give me a few second half predictions. Like, what do you think?
I mean,
Like record
y-
players who stays by the end of the year. What's the record looking like by the end?
yeah. I mean, I think like our record, I think there's a possibility if they stay hot, they could win 92 games. I don't see that happening. I think we're looking more like 88, 89 wins, which, again, that's improvement on last year. So I think I'm pretty happy with that overall. But I don't see them winning, 96 games. I don't see them going on a tear like they've been on this last month. As we've seen with baseball in general, teams don't stay consistently hot or consistently cold for the most part. And I don't think the Mets will either. I definitely think the All Star break kills the, heat a little bit. And I kind of wish it hadn't happened right now, but it is what it is. I think I don't see Pete leaving. I just don't see him taking money to go somewhere else. I don't think that's the type of player he is. I think he'll stay in New York and re-sign something like a $240 million deal, 10 years, something like that. Along those lines.
Yeah.
Um,
For
yeah.
Pete,
What do you
I think
think?
especially if you re-sign here, the pitch from the Mets needs to be if you re-sign here, you become basically a New York legend for the next
Mhm.
10, 15 years. You start in 2019, you'll finish your career here, you go out as a star in New York, which I very few players can say they've come to New York and succeeded from the start to the very end. Like that is a very hard thing to do. You resign, you sell him on that, and I really don't think anybody's gonna pay him more than what he's looking for. Like I get he wants to get paid like 200 plus, but I don't think anyone is unless like the Cubs get really desperate or the Guardians get really desperate. I don't see I don't see Pete's leaving. I think it's gonna be a repeat of the Nemo Diaz situation where they come back, they test the free agent market. Cohen tells them, go find your best offer, come back, and I'm gonna match it and above. And then boom, Pete's gonna come back.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about having Cohen as the owner. One of those, like, kind of underlooked down, benefits of having him is just that we can offer these guys who are homegrown stars, who are, getting to the point where they're, veterans in this league. With Pete, going in his sixth year next year. Um, he's a veteran in this game. He's been around for a long time. He's put up numbers and he's been a phenomenal player for the organization. So I think Steve Cohen absolutely has the money to re-sign Pete, and I just don't see a reason he wouldn't. So overall, yeah, I think Pete resigns.
Yeah. He was even on record a few days ago saying, like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to be traded. I love New York. This is my home. And I
Yeah,
think you'll see him follow through in the offseason.
yeah.
I don't think Boris has as much pull as he used to in the league, as we saw with Chapman and Soler
Mhm.
and Snell. I don't think his clients are getting the money they used to. And I think a lot of that is a lot of the teams have gotten smarter with analytics and they can
Mhm.
predict easier like when a player is going to drop off or if there's signs of regression like from the start of the contract. So I don't think the Boris tactic is going to work here. I think he's going to end up having to come back. He's going to not happy. He's going to happily come back to the Mets for 6, 7, maybe even 8 years if they
Yeah,
settle on that.
for
It's
sure.
already we've already seen it pay the Cohen effect work with Nemo. Like he came back right away in December, and he's been playing like a stud ever since.
For
Yes,
sure.
you still have the excuse of the injury, but I think he's still got a couple good years left in him before he tails off. So
I agree.
yeah,
I'm a little worried, I will say, about an Aaron Judge situation. Not that I think he'll leave or anything, or that, Judge isn't worth the money, but what I will say is that I think Judge is on too long of a contract for too much money. And I
yeah,
don't want to get stuck in something like that with Pete, where we're paying a lot of money for a player who's not producing, and we've had these issues before, as, we just saw July 1st, obviously Bobby Bonilla Day, and brings back those memories. Same thing with guys like Cespedes, and you know, yeah, you know what
yeah.
I'm talking about.
I don't want to repeat the Chris Davis situation.
Chris
That
Davis,
one.
yeah, great example. Yeah, we just don't want to overpay for too long for a power hitter who inevitably will fizzle
Drop
out in
off.
years, just
Yeah.
as they do.
Yeah, Pete's the kind of
So,
guy that's the kind of player that's going to drop off after like 33, 34.
yeah,
35 if we're
realistically,
pushing it and he stays that good. But,
Yeah, and I mean, he hasn't had a lot of injury problems, so it's totally possible he stays in the league for a long time. But again, odds are that he's not going to be a power hitter the way he was or he is now. Even
Yeah,
so, I'd like to see a good deal with him. I don't want one of these super long extensions where it gives the player the opportunity to go, well, it's all guaranteed money. Hell with it if I don't keep producing.
exactly. And I think a lot of the struggles Pete's had this year are just him in his own head thinking about the contract, which I'm sure that happens to a lot of players. Like he's trying to get his bag, and it gets in your head when you're just trying to hit out. You're going up there, you're trying to hit a home run each time because each stat will count towards your contract, how much money you're going to get. So
For sure. And I kind of wish he had taken the more well, and I will say I will give him credit. He's hitting a lot more for contact this year and he's making better contact than he was last year.
yeah,
Which is great because it's helping the Mets, and that is what we need. I think that's what the league needs in general, is just more
mm,
contact hitter. But
yeah,
that being said, Pete's our four guy, he is our slugger. So
yeah,
for him, sure that's in his head thinking, I gotta hit that home run or I gotta produce on the fields, for
yeah.
sure.
He's definitely feels like he's part of the heart and soul of the team, which
Yeah.
it would be kind of devastating to trade him at this point. I also think it speaks to like how much the Mets have connected or they've come alive since May. I think
Hmm.
you're seeing like a lot of the young guys finally get their shot, work with the shot they were given, and they've just taken off. Vientos looks like a star.
Yep.
Alvarez looks like a star. We still have Mauricio in the wings. Scott's coming. Like this is starting to look like Steve Cohen's vision realized. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really glad with the way it's looking right now. I
Yeah.
really hope prospects can, put a dent in
Yeah.
things. Obviously, Jet as well.
Yeah.
Um, just, yeah, guys are waiting on. And obviously, we're down. No Mauricio this year, but hopefully we can see him next year and see what he can
Yeah.
do.
If you can say four of the nine guys, only four or three of the nine guys in your lineup aren't homegrown, that's great. Like if our four mercenary players by next year are Pete, Nimmo, Soto, and Lindor, you take that. Like that's great. Like that's only four guys, and it's a lot of the payroll, but it's still only four guys. It's not like a Philly situation where the whole lineup is full of mercenary players, where
Right.
you just bought them.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I think they've done a really good job with that. I think as worried as we were last year at the deadline with the sell, I think it was the right move. And I think we
Yeah,
are absolutely seeing that payoff right now with this depth in our lineup right now
yeah,
and this just ability to bring in new players when someone's not performing well.
yeah. I also think like what was the best case last year? Like a wild card exit in
Exactly.
like 3 days, and then you flush the whole thing down the toilet for nothing.
Right,
Like
right. Which is
no,
what we did the year before, right? Or the last year, not last year, the year before last year, with just that, kind of pathetic playoff push. And I can't fault Cohen and, you know, the front office at the time making that decision with the way we were winning. But yeah, we don't want
yeah.
to repeat 2022.
And again, with Cohen's money, he basically created a deadline where he was able to buy prospects and basically buy a new farm system, which again, most owners can't do, but he
Mhm.
didn't adhere to the sunken cost fallacy, which I really admire, where it's like, I've already sunk in this much money into this team or this player. There's no use in trading him now. Where it's like, no, I have the money. We're gonna eat the bullet. We're gonna bite the bullet. We're gonna do what's smart for the franchise and move on.
Yeah, no, he clearly cares and he clearly is interested in
Yeah.
actually making that's a good team and not making money. And I really appreciate that from an owner
Yeah.
standpoint.
And I also think you're seeing the youth movement really kick off. Like Alvarez over Narvaez, Vientos
Mhm.
over Vogelback. Like you're clearly seeing they're putting out guys compared to the last 2 years, which like no harm on Cannon, no harm on Escobar, no dirt on them. But I think Vientos and Alvarez, they clearly play with a little bit more hustle and heart because they're younger. They still have something to prove to the league. Like
Yeah.
you're putting out guys who still have to fight for something, or
Yeah.
their career's just starting,
I
and
mean, the best players
yeah,
in the league a lot of the time are guys in their contract years, and they're guys who are young and looking for a contract. When there's money on the line, and they're how well they perform depends on how much money they get. They're going to perform, and you're going to have better deals. That's why I'm a fan of those short term contracts because it forces that player to produce every year. instead of, going, oh, well, it's guaranteed money.
Yeah, and especially I think that you're seeing the heart and soul of this team go back to May. They could have very easily put their heads in the sand and just kept losing, and by now we'd have like no interest in the team. Oh, exactly. And they're playing. All of them are clearly playing with a chip on their shoulder, and that's something that I don't think you saw the last couple of years, especially with like as good as the 2022 team was. I don't think they were putting. I don't think they had necessarily the energy. There was that energy in the clubhouse that you're seeing right now.
For sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I think there's definitely a certain fire that they're bringing right now, and I want to another quick thing I want to shout out is the acquisitions this year.
Yeah.
Bader, guys like Iglesias, just that energy and the fire they brought. I really like their play style. As much as I don't think Bader's going to be a long term Met, I really like his fire. I really like Iglesias. I like that they bring to the clubhouse and they bring that energy. And I think also seeing that step up from Nimmo and Lindor with the way they've taken over and become leaders on that team is really something that shows, this team is maturing and we're watching these guys who a couple years ago were young. It was a really young team. We're watching them mature nicely and get older. And there are some guys, guys like McNeil who have not aged beautifully, but there's certainly some hope on that team.
Definitely. And if they don't have to play this hot, but if they at least maintain this pace in some sort of way until the deadline, it opens up the door for a few relievers to come through the door. I'm looking at a Carlos Estevez or a Dylan Floro or a
Yes.
Chad Green, someone who can just come in and is very makes it so you don't need Diaz isn't the only guy you can count on for 3 outs. Like
Well, I mean, I've been a little disappointed with the fall off from Diekman, and the same thing with what's his name?
Ottavino.
Yeah, Otto Garrett hasn't been himself either, though. Those three have just been a little bit underwhelmed with, especially Diaz or Ottavino having gotten paid recently. Want to see a little more out of them.
Yeah, I think they're gonna try and get what they can out of Otto, but if Diekman keeps going like this, they're gonna DFA him and just eat the money. Like it's not worth it. Like if a player just hurts you and he doesn't help you in any way, just cut him. And Cohen
Yeah,
has the money to do that. Like that's how
right.
you miss the playoffs by keeping those dead weight players that pull down the team on the
Yeah.
roster.
No, yeah, I think yeah, and again, I think going back to McNeil, I think McNeil is a weak point at this point for me, and I could definitely see him either being DFA'd or, just cut entirely.
I don't think they're DFAing him. I think they're going to bench him and just make Iglesias the everyday second baseman, which Jose Iglesias has definitely earned that by this.
For sure. And I guess that is true. McNeil is not a backup to have, and a little ace in your
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or you could trade McNeil for a high potential reliever, like maybe give him to the Dodgers in a salary dump or something like
And then next year he's hitting
that.
14.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Dodgers. You know they're going to do that. But yeah, no. For the deadline, I'm really just looking at guys. I don't need a Luis Robert or a Garrett Crochet. I'm just looking for guys who can get outs out of the bullpen. And
Mhm.
basically that's it. Because we're not at a point yet where I'm comfortably saying this team is going to win the World Series. So or this team has the chance to win the World Series. So just no holds barred. Go get after whoever's available. Just buy a couple relievers. That's it. We don't need anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Do you think they need to add a bat at the trade deadline? Do
I
we someone?
I don't think they need a star bat, like an all-star bat. Like I'm not looking at a Bellinger or Robert or Jazz. I'm looking at like a backup right fielder. At this point, I would not count on Starling Marte being available for the rest of the season. Like I'm sure he'll come back at some point, but you can't act like you have to act like he's not going to come back, and B, if he does come back, he's not going to be 100% with his leg.
Yeah, for sure. I think part of me likes the Bellinger trade because we can stick him in the outfield,
Yeah.
uh, replace him, and he is a great fielder, and he's also a good hitter. So part of me is willing to give up some stuff to get
Bellinger.
Bellinger on the field for the
Yeah.
Mets. And
I'm also looking at Conforto as a potential homecoming reunion in right field. He's been a platoon bat for a couple of years in San Francisco. He's
Mm.
solid. He's not the best. He's not what we ever thought he was going to be when they bought him up 10 years ago. But he's still serviceable, and I like him way more than Tyrone Taylor in in like a bases loaded situation or two second and third one out. I think I trust Conforto to drive in the run than I do Tyrone Taylor.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think he's a good option. I don't know that that's the energy we need necessarily, though. I think part of me feels that going and getting someone big may be worth it just as a show of, support, I guess, from the front office and the ownership that they want to win, right? And they
Exactly.
want to keep that rolling. So as much as I don't mind Conforto, I would kind of like to see a bigger bat come through and
Yeah.
saying, hey, look, we're at, 70% right now. We're not hitting amazing, but we're hitting well.
Yeah.
And if we can shove in someone else, like, you know, I don't know, we got the money and we have prospects we can trade. As much as I don't really want to trade prospects, we can. And I think if they can keep it rolling, it might be worth it. But again, I think it depends on the next 2 weeks.
For sure. And also you have to remember David Stearns a couple years ago, Brewers were in a playoff race and he traded Josh Hader.
Mhm.
And the fans blew up at the time as in reason, but it ended up paying off in the long term. I don't think we're trading an Edwin Diaz or any Pete Alonso or any key players, but
Right.
I'm just like get if you're a Mets fan, get ready. Like we could lose someone that everyone loves or like a player that everybody likes, but in moving them in the long term is necessary for long term success.
Do you have anyone specifically in mind?
So like a Sean Manaea, if the Dodgers come to you desperate for pitching and they're going to give you a really good offer, like
Good point.
we'll give you two top 100 guys for Manaea, or if the Orioles come to you and say if you give us Severino, we're going to give you Kobe Mayo or Heston Kjerstad, one of those guys, like you take that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because Manaea and Sevi are only on 1 year deals. You could re-sign them in the offseason. Say, we're going to cut you, we're going to trade you right now, get this prospect back. We'll re-sign you in the winter.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think obviously most guys are going to be fine going to a big team like that, which I think also begs the question, guys like Luis Robert potentially, and just the idea of trading someone to the White Sox who obviously are not doing well this season. I think as a player, you wouldn't necessarily want to go there. Do you think there's any kind of issues they could have with guys getting traded to a team that's not doing well and having some hard feelings coming back in the offseason if they went that route?
I don't think so compared to like trading someone in spring training. If you trade someone at the deadline, that's really realistically only 2 months, 2 full months of baseball that you're there for, and then you can leave. So like if you have to be on the White Sox for a couple of months, like it's tough, but it's only 2 months, and then you don't have to go back to them ever again.
True. Yeah.
Things-
Um, as far as playoff race is concerned, who do you see it coming down between for? Because I don't think we're winning the division,
No,
but
the division
I,
I say is off the table. We're already 12 games out. I don't think we're doing that. Although we did just see the Astros creep up on the Mariners in the span of 3 weeks, but I don't think that's going to happen here. The Phillies are way too talented. So I think we're going to probably finish best case scenario, you're the top wild card. You take down the Braves, who are down Strider and Acuna this year, so they don't have the same firepower they used to. Or second wild card, again, the Cubs are the Cardinals and the Padres aren't as consistent as they've been in previous years, or they don't look like as much of a threat this year. So this is definitely an opportunity for them to take it for the Mets to take advantage of. I think they're definitely a better team at full strength than the Cardinals and Padres. But yeah.
yeah, I think we'll see some shift in the next few weeks with the playoff race. I think there's a lot of teams that are going to start changing. I think
You know,
Cardinals are going to have a little bit of a fall off in the second half. Would be my prediction. But
okay.
I think the Pirates are likely to surge too.
Yeah.
Um, they just look really strong right now, and they look like they've got a lot going for them, especially with Skeens just performing so well, and he's just been so fun to watch.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, one of the teams that scares me the most out of all the teams on the runs of Pirates because they can throw you Paul Skeens game 1, Jared Jones game 2, Mitch Keller game 3. You could easily be in a 3-0 hole. And all they need to do is hit like average and they're going to
Yeah.
be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, I think those games, honestly, though, could really go either way because I think the Mets can jump on good pitching if they're having a good day.
Yeah.
I do think it really just depends on like what they're seeing that day, how they're feeling and just how
Yeah.
the game.
They've beaten up Yamamoto, they've beaten up Dylan Cease, they've beaten up Shota Imanaga. Like they're not no pitcher I'm going to say is completely safe from the Mets
Exactly.
on a good day.
On a good, but then again, we'll get shut out by some random, the five and the Reds lineup,
Yeah.
who just it's like,
Exactly. I also want to give a shout out going down the road into the final months of the season. Nunez has been so solid out of the bullpen.
yeah,
Same as Jose Butto, they've really come out. Butto especially has come out as like the long man you can trust to go 2.5 innings, 2 1/3,
mm-hmm.
2 2/3.
Yeah.
And then Nunez has shown up as a guy you can clearly count on in the 8th for 3 outs. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think the middle relief position is just such an important and overlooked position in the MLB. And I think we're starting to see some of that kind of bouncing back. And just with starting pitching only going, averaging like 4.5 innings at this point, I think we're going to see that kind of, rebirth of the middle reliever, which I think
yeah,
is a great.
because 3 runs in the 8th inning, it seems like a big lead. But against the Dodgers or the Orioles or even
Yankee.
the Yankees, the Astros, that's not that big. They can easily score 3 runs in an inning.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I didn't. Again, I think tying into that, what about like McGill going to the bullpen and having
I
someone who
definitely see McGill going to the bullpen because he's shown up consistently as a guy who can get through the first 3 to 4 innings okay, and
right,
then he kind of falls off a cliff after max the 5th inning. So I think if
yeah,
you can make him another long, pair him with Butto and make him a long man,
or you
yeah,
get 2 guys go, or have 3 guys going in a day. Bring in starting out with Mania and then McGill and then Diaz to close it,
yeah,
and
that could easily work as a bullpen game in the postseason. You go to Mania, then you go to uh, Buto or McGill, then you go to Diaz or Nunez, and then game over.
right,
If assuming everything goes well, the Brewers did this in 2018 with Wade Miley. They pulled him after one batter, made it a bullpen game.
right. Yeah, it can work. It can absolutely work if your bullpen's working. And I obviously, the Mets had that 5 pitcher no hitter a couple years ago. So we've seen it work to really great extent sometimes to have bullpen days like that where you've got 4 or 5 arms going in a day. Is I wouldn't say ideal. I'm more of the proponent of the one pitcher pitching a lot, but it is what it works. It works.
The Rays have operated like that for the last 3 to 4 years, and it's worked out almost every year. So they
Yeah.
clearly have. There's clearly a method for success in there with having 3 to 4 to 5 bullpen guys that you really trust that can combine for 9 innings on any given day.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, and all you need is we're not seeing games go late anymore either. So I think that kind of takes away part of the pitching aspect and saving your bullpen because we just don't see those long games anymore with the new rules. Not that
you need your like oh, you need your
Right.
like core 3 circle of trust.
Right.
Like so in this case it'd be Diaz, Nunez, Buto, and then you need like the other 3 who may not be solid every single game, but they're gonna most of the time they will be at the very most solid. It's like Phil Maton, Adam Ottavino if he gets his crap together, and maybe like 1 or 2 more relievers that you trade for at the deadline.
Well, and the other thing with Otto for me is that I feel like individually he has some of the best pitches in the league. I mean, his sweeper is off charts. That is a beautiful pitch. And it just kind of disappoints me sometimes to see that pitch sequencing, or even just tunneling not working in his favor. And I don't want to, say that that's Alvarez at all or any catcher, but I don't know. I'm wondering if there's some, shift that needs to be made between his catching and him pitching.
Definitely. I think that Ottavino still has some stuff left in the tank. We saw in 2022, he looked lights out. Even in
Mhm.
2023, he wasn't as good, but he was still solid. I
Right.
don't think regression this badly will stick around for the rest of the year. If I'm proven wrong in 2 weeks and he's DFA'd, it's disappointing, but you know,
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I think that
there's definitely there's definitely potential for him to turn the season around. And again, if you see in the next 2 weeks he just stays the same, that's
mhm.
where getting one or two relievers at the deadline really comes into the picture.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I think yeah, I do think the season really is riding a lot on these next 2 weeks, but it's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. Be fun.
And also the Mets have also put themselves in a position where even if you don't make the playoffs, you still gave the fans a really good year, something to be look forward to in the future compared to
Yeah,
like 2 months ago where it looked like, you just got to blow up the whole thing. They look like even if they don't make the postseason this year, the future and especially next year looks very bright. Especially if you can get like Juan Soto and keep Pete or get Bregman and keep Pete. This team can be very good for a long, long time, especially with all the prospects coming through. If like maybe like half of them or like 60% of them come through.
totally. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it just kind of yeah, just rides in the next 2 weeks.